HARK, we are here. It is time for yet another Star Wars Unlimited video. Got a couple of previews, got an announcement, and we have a piece of art and maybe some other things to go over during the video. But as it stands right now, we have not a whole lot of information, but we have some information. A reminder, this video will not cover the 726, which is as of release today. FFG live stream about the Gen Con demo decks. Josh and Jeremy will be going over those shortly after this video releases, so go check that out. I'll be in chat hanging out with y'all, talking about what is to be excited about with Star Wars Unlimited. We will cover the live stream on next week's video, so that it should be a more substantial video as it stands. I'll type my notes as the video is going, and yeah, that should be exciting. So let's just get right into it. We have a very interesting piece of art here that was given to us by FFG through the Unlimited FFG Twitter account. It's an interesting design. It's something that the base class I've seen before, but this specific thing I've never seen before. We have here a piece of art. Kanan Jarrus was referenced, but this is not from Rebels, at least the TV series, as far as I know. I've watched it multiple times. I don't recognize this ship at all. I do recognize that the Wookiee gunship from the last video was actually in Rebels and a couple of other things. It's an old Star Wars Galaxies thing that I've seen as well. But this is a very heavily modified Z95. You can tell because it's got the quad engines on the back. It has the missile pod carriers, but the single lasers on either wing, and it doesn't have the S-foils that go into position. So this is certainly not an X-wing. It doesn't have the built-in droid pod, so it must have its own hyperspace navigation computer. This, like I said, it's a very, very heavily modified Z95. I would not be surprised if this card specifically was just modified Z95, like the ARC 170 we saw before, which is called the Restored ARC 170. There's adjectives that have been added to certain cards just to make sure that there are other versions of those that can be used if necessary. I would not be surprised if this is just artist interpretation. Somebody was just told, hey, this is what we need, modify it to look cool, do what you can. So it kind of, basically it's the Hot Rod Z95, as you can see. It's a very cool piece of art, very neat piece of art. It has brought up a lot of speculation on what it's going to be. It's definitely going to be a space unit. We don't know. Probably going to be a heroism unit, or at least no morality aspect. And then it's Z95. So it's going to be cheap. It's going to be a cheap fighter type space unit. I mean, it's not really much to go off of. It's just this piece of art. This piece of art is fantastic. There's no doubt about it. It's a really cool Z95 that's been modified. It's not Bosk's Z95 off the Houndstooth. It's not any of the ones that were used by the Saga Gerrera's Rebels, or any of the Scum and Villainy ones from X-Wing. This is literally a brand new design that I've never seen referenced before. It's cool. It'll be interesting to see what it turns into as a card, but as it stands right now, it's just a cool looking ship. Our next piece of art here, again, comes by way of FFG, because that's how we get the vast majority of our art, is a character that many people are familiar with. Wanna Wanga. That is, of course, Bib Fortuna. He's a skeevy little character, probably going to be fringe. I think he's going to be cunning, but he could just be flat villainy. I think a lot of the Jabba's Palace characters are going to be, they'll probably all be villainy, with the exception of people that aren't necessarily evil. But I think the majority of them are going to be cunning, because that seems to fit the way that those characters are kind of aligned. The Wing Guard is vigilant specifically because it's a Guardian, even though it's a Cloud City Trooper and fringe and kind of neutral-ish, but that's again because it fits more the vigilant style, because it's a guard. Maybe the Gamorreans become vigilance, doubt it. Those will probably be aggression, honestly, but I think most of the generic characters and characters like Bib Fortuna and Jabba the Hutt will be cunning villainy, most likely. Should be interesting. There's a very fun music video out there. I believe the name is called Wanna Wanga. It'll be linked in the link below. It's by Isaac2187. Featured very heavily on Arnold T101's Grand Arena Championship streams for Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. If you're familiar with that game, you're probably familiar with Arnold T101. He also makes really cool music, but this was one of the first things that I had heard that he had used that a bunch of people were like, this is funny and stupid, let's keep playing it. And it is funny and it is stupid, and they definitely kept playing it. So check that out while you can. And Bib Fortuna. Our first preview today comes to us from the WreckNRule website. They've got a series of articles that go over a bunch of different things, but their first preview here was the Rebel Pathfinder, which is a 2-cost heroism ground unit. It has 2 power, 3 health. It is a Rebel Trooper. It has the keyword Saboteur, and it is a common from SOR, 239 out of 252. It's a neat little unit. It's costed similarly to the Alliance X-Wing, but we can see the difference between a space unit and a ground unit. This ground unit specifically has Saboteur. When this unit attacks, ignore Sentinel and defeat the defender's shields. So this is representative of the Rebel snipers that we saw a little bit of in Return of the Jedi. The Rebel reinforcements and/or strike team had a couple of snipers. If you're familiar with Star Wars Legion, you'll note that this is exactly something that you'll have used in that game with the strike team. That's just the sniper and a second unit, a second character. Pretty cool character. This is going to be really neat for going up against Saboteur, or is it going up against decks that have a lot of shields? I don't know. Probably right now in terms of 30-card demo decks, this will definitely be very heavily used because it does ignore Sentinel. But I don't know that this would be a main deck card for most matchups, especially if you know you're going up against just like Aggression Command, which so far only has Villainy has a Sentinel unit, but Aggression and Command themselves do not. Vigilance does have a Sentinel unit and has a lot of shields. So if you know your opponent's got this going, you just pack yourself a couple of Rebel Pathfinders and you can at least bypass some of the Sentinel and defeat the shields that you're going to be facing when going up against a Vigilance aspected commander base combination. Or even draft. This is a great card on draft. Bypass Sentinel, bypass shields, 2 cost, 2 damage, poop, 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 right? I think that this unit kind of sets a standard for the way that heroism 2 costs are going to look. It's going to be a lot of 2/3s. Space will just be blank, but ground will have at least 1 ability on it or some sort of text on the card itself. The great art here. It'll be interesting to see how this interacts with other things. And seeing more specifically just heroism units, and we've seen a ton of just villainy units, I wonder how viable it's going to be to play let's say you just decided to play Luke and a random aspected base. Let's say the Administrator Tower for Cunning. So that puts you at Vigilance, Cunning, Heroism. I wonder how viable it would be to just play Heroism. The way that they have these things costed and the way that we've seen the costs of cards so far, again, really early take on this. We've only seen about 34, 35 cards as a result of the early previews for Spark of the Rebellion. The aspect penalty of having a second aspect on there, whether it's Command or Aggression or Cunning or Vigilance, does tend to boost what the card does, because if you don't have that aspect, you have to pay a penalty. So it's almost like they're costing things as if they have that aspect penalty on them, but then throw an aspect on them to drop the actual cost down to make it more viable. Whereas a just basic heroism, if you don't have heroism, you're paying 4 for this, and that wouldn't be worth it. But if you do have heroism, which is not uncommon on leaders, you will just be paying 2 for this, and it's a decent trade-off for what Saboteur can do for you. Now, it does take a round for this to come back around, because as units come into play exhausted, unless something else unexhausts them and allows you to attack, but you can set this up as your last turn event drop. Then at the beginning of the next turn, if you have the initiative, you can use this to delete shields, or if you don't have the initiative, it threatens shield deletion, sentinel bypass to either win the game or clear an important unit or clear the shields off your base or off another important unit, so on and so forth. All the different things that Rebel Pathfinder can do, it's all available for you to do right at the beginning of the turn. So I think it's a great card, but I don't think it is a card that will see a lot of main deck play. Side deck play, if a side deck does exist in this game, which I do believe it will, probably your number 1 pick. Or you could do like what people do in Flesh and Blood, run 1 of these in your main deck, 2 in the sideboard, and then side in the 2 when you need them, just in case you come up against something right off the bat that you would need it. You can try to fish for it, so on and so forth. Our next card here comes by way of Wampa Radio. It is a preview that's been affectionately named by the community DJ Laser. I actually like that a lot. I watched the video about this preview. 2 very interesting people that are part of Wampa Radio. I also managed to catch a lot of Flake's Flesh and Blood commentary over the weekend, as if this is being recorded on Monday. that whole thing is finished. Fantastic discussion about that game there, and I can see how his passion for games comes through with both the Wampa Radio and with his Flesh and Blood commentary. So it's exciting to have him in the community as somebody who knows card games and is going to be talking a lot about our card game in the future. Fantastic commentary there. They were both very excited about this card, Charmer and Flake, members of Wampa Radio. Let's just get right into it. We have here the Super Laser Technician. Let's zoom this in a little bit. It is a 3-cost ground unit, command villainy, 2 power, Imperial, 1 health. It is a common from SOR 83, and it says, when defeated, you may put this unit into play as a resource and ready it. And you can see DJ Laser because of the helmet, and then also because of the glow off the panel here. Command is ramp in multiple forms. Tarkin ramps things back into your hand by allowing you to take Imperials off the top of your deck. That's technically more a search effect, but it could also be considered ramp to keep resources in your hand for later. And then Super Laser Technician is directly, hey, I die, cool, I go and play as a resource. This is a very strong card for Vader specifically, because it means that you can get your leader into play earlier. And if you combo this correctly, you could get Vader into play. This thing, if that thing dies in the process of getting Vader onto the board, it comes into play as a ready resource, and then you have the resource, potentially have the resources available to drop Vader's saber right onto Vader himself. As a 3-cost, he can be played as early as round 2. With this card, there's a lot of opportunities for this specific unit to be very strong in the game. Some people don't agree with me, and that's perfectly fine. But what I want to point out here is that Super Laser Technician is basically a card that says, on the next round, deal 2 damage to a unit, and then play a resource. That's basically what it says. If your opponent chooses to kill this to protect their board presence, you still get a resource. And they also wasted something to get rid of this that you would have already gotten rid of yourself, specifically because of the fact that it is a 2/1. It's going to die to literally anything. If something even glances at it wrong, it's gone. You could also, if you're running Vader with the Death Star command base to be aggression command villainy, you can ping this guy with your own Vader effect. Now that costs more resources than you probably want it to, and you're probably better off setting up to have Vader ping something for 1, so that next turn the Super Laser can get rid of a 3 health unit instead of just a 2 health unit. But even if this only swings at a Sentinel, that's still value that you wouldn't have had otherwise, because this guy wants to die. So he's gonna go hit a Sentinel and die, and now your opponent has 1 less thing that it can trade with properly to maintain a benefit as a Sentinel unit. Going up against a cell block guard, you could play this guy, if you have the resources, play this guy on your next action, tap Vader to ping the Sentinel, and then at the beginning of the next turn, send the Super Laser Technician at the cell block guard, and now you've only spent 4 resources to get rid of the cell block guard, but you've done that across 2 turns, 2 rounds, excuse me. 4 resources on the first round, 0 resources on the second round, or on the next round, not first and second. And then you get a resource back. So it's the Super Laser Technician, unless you can negate its effect, which we haven't seen anything that does that in the game yet. There probably will be, but nothing yet. Super Laser Technician will always automatically even out or be a +1 depending on when his ability activates, because we do take cards from our hand to play face down as resources. Super Laser Technician says, hey, I'm going to be a resource anyway. You might as well play me so that I can do something and then come back in as a resource. I think the strongest part, and maybe a mistake in terms of gameplay balance, is that when it becomes a resource, it is readied. That's huge. That is huge. That's automatically a +1 to your board state when this thing dies, doing whatever it is you want it to do, or your opponent taking it out so that it can't do anything to you. It comes in ready, and I think that might be a mistake. We'll see in the future if this becomes too strong, but realistically, even if it's not an Imperial deck, if you have a command deck with villainy, this is probably automatically a 3 of in your deck, no matter what. At 5 cost, not worth it. 3 cost, way worth it. And this is, again, huge draft card. You pull this guy, he's automatically in. Because again, like I said at the beginning, it's effectively a pay 3, deal 2 damage next round, and gain a resource. It's huge. It's a huge card. You can't really say much more about it. Over the last week, we had a couple of announcements / non-announcements. I'm not trying to use that disrespectfully. It's just kind of the way that it's come across. most of us that are in the Star Wars Unlimited community have known for a little while that GameGenic is going to have a line of products that will be associated with Star Wars Unlimited. We had that announcement during one of our first Fantasy Flight Live streams about Star Wars Unlimited, but it looks like on the 19th, so about 5 days ago as of recording, that GameGenic finally fully officially announced that they are releasing products alongside. Stay tuned for mind-blowing innovations. There's also a press release PDF that will be in the description below, along with all the other links, that goes over the kind of just the pressy way. It's kind of a media announcement rather than it is a retailer or player announcement. I feel that at Gen Con, they will be going over product lines that we're going to see for Star Wars Unlimited, and I think it's going to be super exciting when that actually happens. I'm fully expecting deck boxes, playmats, maybe a bigger box like the dungeon that they have, which I have somewhere. Sleeves are going to be huge, going to be a huge thing. One thing I really hope is that they punch up the quality on their sleeves. I think that GameGenic has absolutely 100% the best deck boxes in the business. Their Watchtower, their Double Tray, Stronghold, whatever it's called, the dungeon, all their little, the different card case containers that they have are really good. And even their kind of like clamshell plastic deck boxes are pretty decent. I know they're making boulders. I don't remember exactly what they're called. If you're unfamiliar with what a boulder is, it's basically a deck box that pops open, and it's a really hard cased container made by Ultimate Guard. The one thing that Ultimate Guard does better than GameGenic across the entire game is their katana sleeves. Now, katana is very hard to get a hold of. I actually recently got some at a store local to me that's not my normal store that I was able to go to. I'm using it to sleeve two of my Flesh and Blood decks. If GameGenic could get close to that, or at least the same sleeve consistency and feel that Dragon Shield has right now, which to me are the ones I most commonly use. If GameGenic could get close to that feel of Dragon Shield, or at least get to the katana level, GameGenic would blow Ultimate Guard out of the water, and it would be Ultimate Guard's game to lose. Hopefully, the competition in the market is going to make it really good. Right now, the two top sleeving companies are Ultimate Guard katanas and Dragon Shield. Just their Dragon Shield sleeves, matte backs, all that. They're fantastic. GameGenic regular sleeves are pretty good for basic board games that have cards in them, but not necessarily card games where you're constantly shuffling. And then, of course, deck boxes. GameGenic just can't be beat. It doesn't happen. I remember when Ultra Pro Eclipses used to be the best sleeves in the game, and they are no longer. But yeah, GameGenic coming out with their own accessory line with Star Wars Unlimited. It should come out at the same time as the actual game does in 2024 with their global release. So that is fantastic and exciting. And that's all we have for this video. Shorter video, not as many previews, not as many big pieces of information. But as a reminder, this video today will not cover the Gen Con demo video deck thing live stream that is coming out from FFG that should be airing shortly after this video finishes. We'll be covering that next week, getting all the information we need for that together. Should be exciting. I'll be watching it with you all when it comes time for that stream. As it stands right now, we're done. We've got nothing else to do. Leave a comment on what you're excited for with all of these card previews, what you want to see from GameGenic when it comes to sleeves and deck boxes and accessories for Star Wars Unlimited. When you think that Star Wars Unlimited will officially release in 2024. I don't think it's going to be in January, honestly. It would take longer than people probably would want, but I think that a May release is going to be the key for them to cash in on that May the 5th. But if it comes earlier than that, I'm hyped. I'm excited. I'll be happy for that. So let me know what you think about all of the Star Wars Unlimited things that are coming out. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining me today, and we'll see you all in the stars.